Hello there. I'm the fellow who made Marth.exe, and since that game is so weird and vague with its story, leading to many people being confused,
Return to the X yourselves! What?
I figured it would be nice to make a video explaining it for anyone who was dying of curiosity. Also, big thanks to Toadbup and Luigikid for making videos on Marth.exe. Not only is it super cool to see a game I made be played by YouTubers, but it also gave the game way more reach than it ever would have otherwise, thanks to the power of the niche internet micro-celebrity. Thanks to them, this game went way beyond just the small SRPG studio community that it was made for, and speaking of which, I'll tell you the story of how that April Fool's Day prank went down when we're done with the lore. Anyway, on to the interesting part. So, Marth.exe kind of requires knowledge of Marth's games, Shadow Dragon and Mystery of the Emblem. So, spoilers for a 30-year-old Japan-only game. In Shadow Dragon, Hardin was one of Marth's trusted allies. He was a Lord of Arles, called Orleans in the Japanese version. Despite being a more experienced commander and having more clout than Marth at this point on account of the whole Marth's homeland was conquered by the enemy thing, he willingly passed command to Marth as soon as they joined forces. This makes it all the more strange when we see his character take a complete 180 in the sequel game, Mystery of the Emblem. After the first game, Hardin married Nina, princess of the largest and most important country in the continent, Arcanea. This made him the most powerful monarch in the land. After a series of oddly sus commands given to Marth in the early stages of Mystery of the Emblem, the player finally comes face to face with Hardin, and he's certainly changed. In an uncharacteristically flashy and bulky suit of armor, with gray skin and red and black eyes, he's almost a .exe character already. Later we learn that this happened because Hardin was given the Dark Sphere, an ancient relic that basically allows evil spirits to force their way in to the holder's body and take them over. And that is the basis for the .exe game. The events of Marth.exe are meant to be a fake reality that Hardin is being shown by the evil spirits that infected him when he obtained the Dark Sphere. The spirits are showing him a horrific, twisted version of the world he lives in and telling him that Marth caused it. Then they bring him to the love of his life, Nina, who tells him he's a hero. He's the only one who can save the world, and save her. At this point, Hardin can't help but listen to what he's being told, so the evil spirits have now succeeded in their goal of getting Hardin to attempt to kill Marth. Hardin still sees this warped reality, but his actions have effect in the real world. He's actually fighting Marth, as we see in the final cutscene of Marth.exe. Speaking of which, the true ending begins when Marth.exe stabs the final blow into Hardin. And that's what begins the ending cutscene. And I really should have had a wide shot for this. Now that I think about it, that would have showed things a lot better. Anyway, we see Hardin stunned, and then our view glitches out. And remember, the first time we saw a glitch in our view in Marth.exe was when all the horror stuff started. And now, all of it's ending, so it glitches back. We see Emperor Hardin from Mystery of the Emblem as the color returns to his face and his eyes go back to normal, just like what happens in Mystery of the Emblem when he's killed in his boss fight. And just like there, Hardin dies. He drops the Dark Sphere on the ground, the source of all this trouble. It shatters into 1,000 pieces, one of which slides into view, and in the reflection we see Marth. Not Marth.exe, but the real Marth in the real world, closing his eyes sadly, having just been forced to kill his friend in order to free him from the Dark Sphere. The only thing Marth could do to help him. Something y'all might have missed is this little tidbit. Did you catch that? Let's go again. There we are. Let's brighten that up a bit, shall we? Yeah, there it is. It's a .exe game. You know I had to include the Rivers of Blood title screen that flashes up for 0.1308 seconds that the protagonist is somehow able to remember every detail of, despite it being gone in the blink of an eye. Another thing that is tied into the story of Marth.exe is all 4 characters in the final battle are canonically, in the actual games, in a love triangle. Or, I guess, a love square? Or love branching path? Anyway, Hardin is in love with Nina. Nina doesn't love him back. But Nina fancies both Marth and Camus. Camus was also the subject of Nina's interest, but in this fake world, Camus plays second fiddle, so Hardin's not out to get him. That love triangle stuff was just a cool starting point for this whole thing, where I started to develop the idea from which Hardin's perspective would show both his greatest love and the subject of his jealousy. Now, this is one of the endings I mentioned in the description, can you get all 3 endings? If you beat the Marth boss fight, you get a little secret ending. I only added this because someone managed to figure out how to beat the Marth boss fight. It was supposed to be impossible, and on our first playthrough it basically is, but someone tried the amazing tactic of hiding in the corner like a little wiener. So I felt I had to give this person an ending since they beat it, I updated the game. And in this I would make a level that he could truly never beat. If you win and get to this level, everyone falls silent. The static overtakes everyone. Then Hardin is left in the void, a shell of a man, now that the Dark Sphere has no more use for him. You can't move, you can't attack, nothing is here, even in the stats screen, nothing. All you can do is quit the game. So, as you might have noticed, the itch.io page mentions that Marth.exe was made for April Fool's Day. And the story from that is also pretty fun, so before we wrap this up, let me tell you how that went. Before development began, I just got the idea in my head that it would be a great April Fool's Day prank to make an old school EXE game, then trick people into playing it and thinking it was a normal game. And I had the means to do it, thanks to a game engine I had called SRPG Studio. It's like RPG Maker, but for Fire Emblem instead of Final Fantasy. Naturally, I was part of the SRPG Studio community, and I knew a lot of people in the space. So I approached some of them, saying things like, "Hey, I'm working on a project, it's almost ready, would you be up for trying it out when I have a demo ready, maybe?" And they all agreed. So over the course of about 2 months, I worked hard on the game so I could release it in time for April 1st. It went through a lot of bumps. I even found that SRPG Studio's video player didn't work in full screen, so I had to bug the devs to fix that. Not knowing if they'd fix it in time, I had to manually assemble all of the animation frames and sound effects one by one in the engine. But even with all that, I finished it and I released Shadow Dragon Rearmed. If you don't know, Shadow Dragon is often criticized in the Fire Emblem community for various reasons. The visuals, the lack of support conversations, the wonky balance. So I presented this as a fan rebalance project that would address a lot of these criticisms, hence Rearmed. I figured this would make people in the community take interest, and they did. The people I asked to try it went and played it, and I posted it on the SRPG Studio Discord servers. No one seemed thrown off that I was posting on April Fool's Day, and that was their first mistake. I even had one guy genuinely try to give me feedback with my balance changes as he played, but just like all the rest, he found himself in something a bit different to Shadow Dragon. Everyone who downloaded Shadow Dragon Rearmed that day was met with what looked like a normal fan recreation of Shadow Dragon, but then all their units vanished, and the music stopped, and they were left with just Marth and the boss. And from there, it got spookier and spookier until they eventually realized, oh, this is an EXE game. And I bamboozled everyone. One person even said, damn, the first time I actually play a project posted in the server and I get pranked. It was hilarious. And naturally, the day after, I just changed the title to Marth.exe and let it be its own thing. 2 months of work, with frame-by-frame animation, bug fixing, asset importing, and more, and it was all worth it, because this ended up as the greatest April Fool's Day prank I have ever done. And hey, now we have yet another .exe game for the pile. I'm glad I could contribute to the every character has a .exe game theory. And that's the story of Marth.exe. I had a ton of fun making it, and I'm super glad people ended up finding it beyond just our little SRPG corner of the internet. If you liked any of what I was doing in Marth.exe, maybe you could check out the actual game I'm working on, Silver and Steel. It's like Fire Emblem, except with historically inspired designs. If you couldn't tell, I'm a bit of a fan of medieval stuff. And way better siege mechanics, and its own story and fun levels, and not nearly as many bugs as Marth.exe. I'm still surprised Luigikid managed to deselect Marth in Chapter 1 and just game over himself. We have an itch.io page where you can play the game, and a Discord server if you feel like joining in. Also, speaking of Luigikid, shout out to Lunaproc4913 in the comments of his video for basically getting the whole thing right and sharing that with the people over there. All the Star Wars.exe enjoyers. If you see this video, big thumbs up. Glad to see someone who got it. Anyway, that's everything. Thanks for stopping by. I hope you enjoyed the game, and I hope you'll enjoy Silver and Steel if you choose to follow along.